Good evening. This is Ruth Shepherdson, Plateau Valley Ag teacher. I'm going to do a quick review of a state FFA degree. It is 2026 in February, and this is what I call Ag teacher couch time, where you sit on the couch at 9 o'clock and wish you had better work ethic about getting things done earlier in the day and still manage to get just a little bit done. You need to start a state degree review by making sure you have the most accurate degree check sheet. That can be found on the Ag Education Moodle, and you can see that it's titled the Colorado State FFA Degree Check Sheet. This corresponds with AET, but it's very important that you have the entire thing. It's a 3-page document, but note that at the end of it there are 3 additional pages that go through best practices. If you're new to the state degree process, I would actually keep those handy because they're fairly good information in terms of rule justification. The state degree check sheet has several sections to it. We're going to begin with the basic requirements, and so I will come back to this screen multiple times. Note that we're in a section of the check sheet called automatic check sheet, and so those basic requirements here, there are 6 of them, 6 of them, they coordinate very closely to the first section of a degree. So once you have that sheet handy, I like to have it in paper copy, but I wanted to show it to you on the computer as well. You're going to go in on the Advisor AET portal, and you're going to go into a student's profile. I've chosen to use my daughter's, Kayla Shepherdson. She already has her state degree, but we can look at that actual degree. That way I don't break any rules. Click into the Degree and Application Manager, and then you're going to scroll down here and look for the blue hyperlink to the left of the one that says AET State Degree. When you go into that, you can see that her degree was run about a year ago because that's when she worked on her state degree. I like for that to be run in the same calendar year that I'm reviewing it. So if she wasn't getting her state degree till now, I would ask her to rerun that, and you may have to do that with a student. You then click on the hyperlink called Application, and that will open up the Degree and Application Manager. The first thing you're going to do for this first part of the checklist is go to the word checklist on the left-hand menu. You're going to see that it also has 6 sections in the basic requirements. If you have questions about these, you can click on any of the hyperlinks on the right to double check, but I don't get too hung up on this first part because truthfully the computer checks most of it for you. So for example here, the computer has gone in and checked in this membership check portal that they have the correct number of months needed to earn a state degree, and that's why it says met there. We have been seeing a few errors in those if that for some reason says unmet, but you click down here and you note that it seems like they should have met it. You can click on the button that says refresh membership data, and oftentimes that fixes it. Go back here to the left-hand column where the menu is and click on checklist. I am pretty well happy as long as these say met here and are computer checked. These are, in my opinion, this first section is hard to fool the computer because it's doing things like tracking ag classes over time, years of membership, the electronic signatures, that kind of thing. So I don't get too hung up on that. If we go back to the checklist, we then scroll down to the next section, which is leadership activity requirements. These leadership activity requirements are the same as that section in AET as well. And so if you have this printed, it's kind of easy to have that side by side. I'm going to go through with you how I check that in AET. I use the hyperlinks on the right a lot. So this first requirement, for example, says candidate has served as an officer, committee chairperson, or participating member of a major committee. they have something entered. So it says met. I'm just going to go through and make sure that that entry is legitimate and it doesn't have any red flags involved. So when we click on the word offices, that tells me that she had entered that she was Sentinel, Executive Committee member, and Vice President. So she fulfills that requirement of holding an office. If a student hasn't been an officer, they have to have served on a major committee, and so you can click on the words committee and see that same thing. The second requirement dictates that they have earned an 80% or better on the parliamentary law test in AET, or recorded at least one journal entry for performing parliamentary law procedures. 10 procedures are required for the state degree. It's important that you note that part there in all caps where it says evaluator must review journal entries to verify requirements are met. And if you go back to that paper checklist, it actually even goes on to say that the item has to be journaled under other activities and include a certain title for that to be correct. And that's just how Colorado has determined that'll be handled. You can check on the exam here, but truthfully, having that exam usually kind of triggers it to say met. And so what I like to really check here is the journal entry. We can, if you have to, you can sort up here under other activities, but we can see that she did make a journal entry during the right span of time that says, just as the check sheet asks, passing the parliamentary procedure test, and that fulfills the requirement of performing procedures of parliamentary law. Now, while I'm on this same window, I actually like to check the next one, which is the line that says they've given an ag-related speech or led a group discussion. And so that also has to be journaled under the other activities, same section, and you may note that it's here on this same window. If you have a hard time finding that, make sure that you have done a couple of things. One is cue date range all. If you're looking in a specific year, that'll cause you problems. And then other under activities under the the top menu. Note that there's a lot of sections there, so like if you mess up and go under other FFA related activities, that's a different section of activity. Okay, so that gets 2 of them done. Those are both ones that had indicated met already, but we're just double checking that those are accurate journals. Next, we move down to the one that talks about attending a minimum of 7 FFA activities above the chapter level. There's actually 2 categories you're going to have to kind of work through to see that. The first off to the right here is competitions. Other competitions, make sure the date range says all. That could cause you problems. And then you're going to go through and check for about 3 things. The first is that did they make sure they didn't enter any duplicate activities that are not appropriate? The second is to make sure that they are actually activities at the district, state, or national level, as in above the chapter level, and make sure that they are all accurate. So what I like to do is just count on my fingers as I do this, or jot it down on a piece of paper, but I read through and I say, okay, this first one looks a little fishy at first because it's the same state CDE competition, but then I read closer and I see that she competed in ag mechanics one day and floriculture the next day. You used to be able to do that at state, so those are both legitimate. I can then see that that same year in 2024, she did a districts in floriculture and a the year before, she attended state ag mechanics. The year before, she also attended state floriculture. Notice that I'm differentiating between year and type. And then her 5th activity here is Crete speaking. So she's got actually 6 activities here listed on this window. If you need to, jot that down. I then usually just stay in the journal to check this, but then I go to other FFA related activities. I then use this sub sort under it, and I like to go to conferences. Now when I look through those conferences, I'm making sure that it says district here, because say there was a local leadership conference, that would not count. We already had, I think, 5 activities, 6 activities. Here are 4 more. I'm checking to make sure that even though these 2 are both district leadership conference, they're in different years. And then she has a 3rd district leadership conference. She also attended big conference. That pretty easily makes up that 7 activities, but if I needed to, I could also change the sort again, get away from conference, and I could say other. Those are both local activities, but sometimes as you look through those, you find other things. The vast majority of our kids that apply for a state degree, it's not that they haven't been involved, it's just that they don't like to keep records, or they don't like to keep records in a timely manner, and then they forget them. So oftentimes you just have to go through kind of the list with your kids about, like, have you logged every national convention you've been to, and every state convention, and every district leadership conference, and every big conference, and every stock show. I recently went to a training that it actually talked about that for county fairs, when you're showing animals through FFA at a county fair, that can also be an activity. So we have plenty of options there. Okay, now I'm going to head back to my degree application manager in the leadership activity requirements. Now we've gone almost to the end here. We just need to check that community service down here at the bottom of the screen. If you click on AET Journal, that will take you directly to it. Double check again that the date range says all, and then you're going to actually look at the total amount here. You can see she has over 25 hours of community service. The second thing you really have to check is that it is more than one different activity, at least 2 different activities. So I see here that she has listed like Town of Colburn setting up tables and chairs, Town of Colburn planting flowers, but then down here Hope West Hospice serving food at their fundraiser. Town of Colburn again, so she does fulfill that. Be very careful to go through this with the kids. The requirements for both state and national FFA community service are quite high, and the big deal is that the chapter and the member cannot have made any money off of the activity. So for example, let's say you serve a dinner to the Elks in your community, like the Elks Lodge, and then they give you a $150 donation in exchange. Even though the member doesn't get that, the FFA chapter does, it still counts not as true community service, but as a collaborative activity where the chapter was paid. So make sure there is no money exchanging hands there, and that'll help you with that. The other thing we have trouble with, sometimes you have to check. If you click on this edit off to the left, you can see that under community service, the first line doesn't ask what the name of the activity is, it asks what the group is that you served. And so oftentimes we have to have students go back and fix that. Okay, now we're headed back to the state degree checklist. We've finished the leadership activity requirements, and next we go into the FFA activity requirements. This first section here of activity requirements is quite a bit simpler than verifying in the SAE records. So when we look at these first 3 here at the top, we see that that is really the computer checking, saying have they qualified for the state degree. And so if you look at line 261, you can see that it does that by verifying, do they earn and productively invest at least $2,500, or have they worked at least 750 hours. Notice that there's a line here, and this will be different for every student, that it actually says how much your value is. So she at the point of this degree application had a value of productively invested as over $10,000 and had 869 hours of experience. If a kid is short here on either of these, it'll actually say unmet in red or not met, and then it will tell them what their numbers are. If you want to verify that, you can absolutely click on these and it will take you to the place where you need to check it in AET. But I prefer to spend less time on this because the computer checks it well, and spend more time down here on verify in SAE records. And so I'm not going to read all of these to you in this verify in SAE records section. You can obviously read and figure out kind of how to go through those. But what I am going to show you is where the easiest place I think is to check them. If you scroll to the top and on the left-hand column, click on the word supporting records. You'll see a blue hyperlink down here, and it says a link to your complete record book report is included with this application. When you click on it, it just looks like a record book report, but the coolest feature is when you click on Ag Experience SAE, it gives you a drop down of all of their SAEs here, right here on the left. And you can actually see it right here as well, but what this enables me to do is go through it one at a time and be able to see if they've completed the requirements. And so I don't mess too much with the career exploration or the foundational one because that does not affect their state degree. But at this point, I like to go through every single one. So before I start going through these, I'm actually going to take a look at this list and see which ones are entrepreneurship and which ones are placement. You can denote that with the EN right under the title. And you can see that Kayla's record book actually gave us tons of headaches because she had 5 entrepreneurship SAEs, so that it was quite intricate. One of the first things I also check in this view is that the pencil, which is the planning document, is complete for each of these. Notice that they're all green, not red, with the exception of career exploration, and that over here the clipboard is all green, meaning it's complete, and the brain. Those are the ones we call. Now the only one that's not complete on the brain is this Flowers by Kayla one, because this is the SAE she's continued over time, which means that she needs to catch up on that part again. But at the time of the state degree, those should all be complete. Pardon me. Now we're going to go one SAE at a time, and I'm going to check a few things. I'm going to actually start with her, we'll say 2023-24 market beef, just because that's a relatively easy one. When I click into it, I can see that there are tabs across the top here that will show you everything you need to know. First thing I check is the SAE plan correct? And then I get a little bit associated under the annual review with what it was she was doing. So she says very clearly how many steers she raised each of that year, because steers span a year. She raised 1 head of show cattle in the 23-24 year. Down below you see she has efficiency factors that she had planned learning outcomes, and she went ahead and typed in the contributing results. Okay, I don't pay too much attention to the budgeted income expenses, but I do roll up here to the top and look at the finances, and this really tells us some important things about the enterprise. On an entrepreneurship SAE, I first look at what the animal is, and then I look at how many head there should have been, and then I actually check here in the expenses first. Can we see the point in time where she bought a steer, where she fed the steer, where she bought some things to help raise the steer, like a tank heater? Did she have equipment that shows depreciation? That means that her non-current equipment is in there. And then did she continue to buy more feed? If you have raised a steer lately, you know that you buy a lot of feed for it. I also have my students actually do a either a labor exchange or actually pay their parents for some pen rent, especially if they don't own their barns and things. She bought some soap for the fair, and then we have another round of depreciation. That looks pretty good to me. It definitely shows the basics. I then scroll down to income, and I see that sure enough, she had some labor exchange for that pen rent, and then she sold that steer at the Mesa County Fair livestock auction. Okay, so I can see that she appears to have done the project financially. Do take a look at those figures, like, maybe she had $4,000 into the steer, and then all of a sudden you see that she sold that steer for like $25,000. You would want to ask some questions like, wow, did you win Grand Champion? Or do you sell drugs? Or whatever it is that you think is going on in that SAE. Then you're going to go to the journal. The rule of thumb we've kind of been operating off of in District 2 lately is that a kid should have at least one journal entry for each of the months that they did that project. And so for my students, I've started having them make sure they have at least 12 journal entries, just talking about different things they did during that project. So anything from halter breaking to being in the show ring, to getting a halter on him the first time. They can be some journal entries that are accumulation of time over the month, and I'm less interested in how many hours they're journaling and more interested in what those journal entries say. Like, do they teach me that the kid really did the project? I like to take a quick peek at the profit loss and make sure I don't see anything that seems unreasonable. Like maybe sometimes inflated profit means that a kid actually entered a sale twice or forgot some expenses, some things like that. And then I like to also take a quick peek at the market manager. That just shows me that sure enough she had one steer entered. She's not holding over any extra animals, and she does have that marked as sold. Now, I could go through all of these. I don't think you want to watch that long of a video, but that would be a similar situation for any entrepreneurship one. If you were looking at a placement one, I would go through the very same kind of process, only I'm going to pay more attention to the journal entries. And I'm going to especially note, if this were placement, I would want to note how many journaled hours they have. In this SAE for house sitting, it's 49.5 hours. And then I would make sure that under finances, if this were a placement SAE, she would have a total of some paychecks, and that paycheck hours need to match the journal entry hours. So that's pretty important. When you read through that last section of the state degree checklist, you can see that those items are pretty detailed in how they're written out. So please reach out if you have more questions about is this a yes or a no, and how do I do that. But I mostly wanted to make sure you knew to find within the supportive records the way to find their SAE and have all this in one place. In my opinion, that saves a substantial amount of time. Good luck reviewing record books. Thanks. Bye.